What's up, guys? Brady Figuel here, coming at you with a review for the new Lorna Shore album, I Feel the Everblack Festering Within Me, released just a couple days ago now, Friday, September 12th. When we're talking Lorna Shore, we're talking about quite possibly the biggest deathcore band nowadays in 2025. They've been around for several years, actually, but it wasn't until their 2021 EP, And I Return to Nothingness, where they really started to blow up. Mostly due to vocalist Will Ramos or Ramos. I don't know how he pronounces it. I've heard both ways. But Will's vocal style just being so over the top was an instant draw to Lorna Shore, and they followed that EP up with Pain Remains back in 2022, their last full-length album, which was solid. I personally wasn't as hyped on that album as most people seem to be. To me, it just kind of felt like a logical successor to the EP from back in 2021 and more of a saturated version of the albums that they had put out before that. It's like people seem to really be on the Lorna Shore bandwagon for one, or they are on the hate train for Lorna Shore. But for me, it's not really that black and white. Even though maybe there hasn't been a full release that hasn't really fully hooked me, and I wouldn't really say I'm a fan of them, I definitely respect them. Because any band that incorporates this much extreme metal influence into their music and actually is a popular band, I mean, that's such a great thing for metal and extreme metal especially. I think sometimes Lorna Shore could be one of those bands that just gets hated on for being popular. I think that's stupid personally. And even though I will have my criticisms for this album, there really wasn't anything that I thought was bad on here, and I see no reason to hate on this band, especially just if that's based on their popularity. All that being said, if there's one thing that's going to wear you down when you're listening to this album, it's just the formula of it all. A lot of these songs, the bulk of the songs, actually follow this rigid modern deathcore formula that Lorna Shore themselves might have even established on Pain Remains or off of their prior EP. And it's actually very similar to that Starset album I just talked about that I reviewed pretty negatively. I definitely enjoy this album a lot more overall, but it's the same kind of issue here, where the band does exhibit some cool songwriting ideas, and they pull from a lot of different influences, but when these songs just feel like they follow the same structure, when you're listening to this album, especially track by track sequentially how it's released, it makes for a really exhausting listen. Like, you can hit play on probably a good 3/4 of this album, maybe 2/3, somewhere in there, and you'll find the same structure. You'll hear that intro synth melody that is setting up the drama of the song, or I guess setting the mood. The song immediately will then kick into blast beats and a kind of like a quirky, bouncy, melodic death metal style of riff. It reaches a chorus section where the cinematics and the synths kind of come back full force and support that chorus to give it that extra layer of saturation and drama. And then, of course, whether it's in the bridge section or maybe in like the second verse spliced in, you have to have the heaviest pure brute force breakdown possible, usually also accompanied by a tempo change. This isn't like a bad formula to use. I'm not necessarily bashing them for choosing this formula. My problem is that they do it too much on this album, and it makes for a very repetitive listen, because by the time you get to some of the final tracks on here, like Lionheart and like even Death Can Take Me, which is a song that overall might be a bit darker, but the fact that it still follows that same formula makes it predictable. Like, as a listener, I don't like when I can listen to a full album, and by the time you're 2/3 of the way through, you're playing these songs and you can already tell what's going to happen next. And even when there's some like slight deviation in the structure and in the arrangement of these songs, it's still, especially the second half of this album, it still feels stagnant. Like A Nameless Hymn is probably the best instance of that later on in the album, because that one is like the ideas are there, they're just arranged slightly different, but it still feels like the same shit at that point. And then even a song like the almost 10-minute closer on here, Forevermore, which has some great ideas, it's a very dramatic and emotional song overall, it still has those really familiar parts, because by the time you get past that extended intro, and then it kicks back into, again, the blast beats, the mellow death riffing, like it's you're listening to that song, at least I was listening to that song, but when that part kicked in, I was like, really? I thought this was going to be something different, but it's not. It's like the band was writing and recording these songs, and they were telling each other, okay, here's where we put this part, here's where we put that part, and that just kind of constituted the writing of the bulk of these tracks on here. And something like that really impacts the listening experience because it kind of makes the album feel a bit more like robotic and soulless at times, when it just feels like it's the same recycled formula for multiple of these songs. The most glaring instance of all the tracks on here, and probably my least favorite song on here, is the song Unbreakable. Like, this is, again, a song where if you've heard any other song on this record, or pretty much any of the tracks on Pain Remains, you know exactly how the song is going to go. It's the second you hit play on it. Like, these parts kick in and they hit, and it's like, oh, okay, yeah, sounds about right. Yeah, that's kind of what I thought would happen. Like, it's not as fun as a listener when it's like that. Same thing with Lionheart. Like, these songs, they're not bad tracks. Like I mentioned, I'll make that very clear. It's just, it's underwhelming, and at times it makes it hard to get through this entire record without losing interest in it. I guess sort of the silver lining in that is that it does make certain ideas and certain tracks stand out a little bit when they break free from that formula. Like the track Glenwood is a pretty good instance of that. This is a track that's very lead guitar driven. Those bright lead guitars kind of drive the song overall as opposed to the vocals doing most of the work. And the vocals on that song I actually really enjoy because they are a lot less like exaggerated in a sense. Like, Will doesn't sound like he's just trying to be like this decrepit gremlin creature. He's doing just straightforward screaming vocals. And especially in this context where the vocals are a bit over the top, if we're being honest, sometimes, it was refreshing to hear a song where he just goes for a more straightforward approach. And to me, it ends up being one of the better songs on here. I also like how at the end of the song, it kicks into a key change. And I remember listening to that, and that's one of the only parts on the record actually where I thought I foresaw like this big heavy breakdown coming in. I mean, can you blame me? But instead they hit me with that key change, and that was one of the few moments on here that actually surprised me. So that was cool. Ironically, the one drawback on that track for me is that the lead guitars themselves kind of drone on a little bit too much, and the melodies themselves to me get a little repetitive just within that song. But overall, I still liked it. It's got some genuine emotion behind it. It's, again, one of the few tracks on here that breaks free from that tireless formula. Another track that does that for me, one of the heavier ones, is War Machine. It's got that kind of synthetic intro, but then the main riff in this case is it takes a lot more from straight-up thrash metal than that typical kind of bouncy melodeath style that constitutes the majority of the riffing on here. And this is also a track that just goes for more of a straight-up, like, aggressive feel as opposed to wanting to be completely oversaturating and overstimulating and being layered and layered with the symphonics and the drama and all that. It was refreshing to hear a song that just kind of goes for more of a straightforward, like, normally I'd use this term negatively, but like a straightforward one-dimensional type of emotion. In this case, just anger. And kind of flipping the script here, in terms of the songs that kind of use these albums' overall themes in ways that I enjoy, probably my favorite track in that regard would be In Darkness, because this track in particular actually leans a bit more in to that melodic death metal influence. The whole premise of the song being a bit brighter, which is evident in that kind of dramatic symphonic intro, which does give me kind of like a melodeath flair. I enjoy that. I also like how throughout the song you get those kind of like bursts of symphonics, just kind of to hold your attention and kind of keep you second guessing in a way. Death Can Take Me, I think, had some potential. For one, just the melodies on display right away into the song when you first listen to it. They're a lot darker as opposed to that kind of overblown drama and at times brightness that a lot of this album kind of maintains in its note choices. Having a darker song like this, I think, was a good opportunity for the band, but I think they kind of missed the mark there just because the formula does kind of bog that song down for me. But I really like the first two tracks on here. Prison of Flesh in particular has some really mean, evil-sounding tremolo riffs that I think are awesome. And that track has some more kind of mood shifts in a way because you get those dark moments, but then you also have that really bright, uplifting chorus. And the transitions between all these parts are done pretty smoothly. And this is also a track where the breakdown actually hits pretty hard. It doesn't feel overly excessive or anything, but just the way that the tempo change, the way it segues into it, and it just feels like it's just crashing right into that breakdown. It goes hard, if I'm being honest. Going off of that, though, I do think there are a few tracks on here that are just a bit too long and a bit too drawn out. Like even on Prison of Flesh, that final breakdown, I don't really think it needs to be there. Same with Oblivion. I said this, I actually did a track review of the song. I said this in the track review. To me, the song Oblivion, it has the logical ending of that song is right at the 5:04 mark. You end it right there, and you got like a pretty snappy track with a lot of different parts in it that's pretty memorable, but the song keeps going, and it kind of just, after you get past that mark, it feels like it's long, it feels like it's a bit redundant at that point. War Machine, too, it has this kind of final breakdown that's shoved in right at the end that I just don't really think needs to be there. Because War Machine by itself is a good thrash-influenced track that separates itself from on here, but that final breakdown just being tacked on to sound heavy and to make it fit with the style that they're going for here, it felt unnecessary to me. It felt a little extra. If there's any aspect of this album, though, that I could give a lot of praise to, it's actually the lead guitars. These solos do a great job of breaking up the monotony in a lot of these tracks. I find pretty much every solo on here to be memorable, to be at least to sound like it's a core part of the song rather than just it being tacked on for flashiness. And in some cases, they're like the highlight of the song. Aside from a track like Glenwood where they're the main driving force of it, there's other tracks where I'm not really feeling it, and then the solo comes in and it makes me view the song a bit more positively. Like Death Could Take Me is a good instance of that. I really like that solo. I think it adds to the song. Also Forevermore, the closer, when that melodic break happens and then those guitar leads creep in and then they get more and more saturated when those harmonies get thrown on top, that really does sound epic. In Darkness 2, which again is a track that has more of a straight up mellow death flair to it to my ears, I think the lead guitar does a great job of complementing that, especially later on in the track when there's that melodic break that kicks in yet again and you get that, again, really tuneful solo. One of the highlights on the record lead guitar-wise for me, easy. And I know I've had a lot of criticism for this record. Like, I feel like I spent a lot more time criticizing it than praising it. But at the end of the day, like, this album's fine. It's not bad. There's nothing on here that I thought was bad, honestly. It just, especially listening to it all the way through. And when I do reviews, I listen to these albums over and over and over again. And I'll be honest with you guys, this one was fucking exhausting to keep listening to over and over just because of the formula of it all, like I said. That's just something that weighed down the listening experience quite a bit for me. And kind of going off of that a little bit, I can also give the album a criticism in a sense that it doesn't really feel like it's taking Lorna Shore's sound anywhere new. It pretty much does feel like, again, more of a logical successor to Pain Remains in that sense. So it might feel a little safe more than anything, and there is still that quality of the album feeling a little bit soulless just because how it's produced, and again, just all these formulas being used over and over. So to kind of wrap things up, this album isn't bad. If you're a fan of Lorna Shore, I'm sure you're going to really enjoy this record. But me personally, I'm going to keep listening to that Shadow of Intent record instead. This album gets a 14 out of 30 for me. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. If you've heard this album, please comment your thoughts down below. Remember to also hit the subscribe button for more rock and metal music-related content and album reviews. Check the description for all of my links. Once again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will catch you guys later. Peace.